everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Scopes from the 19th to the 25th of October. Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's Weekly Scopes. If you've heard this before, you can skip, but this is just the intro on how I, formulate these astrology weekly readings. I use astrology and my intuition to give you advice how you can practically use the knowledge of the stars and the planets and apply them to your life. So my weekly scopes are all based on GMT time and on Vedic Constellational Astrology. So now I'm just going to explain what Vedic Constellation Astrology is and how it differs from Western astrology. So the precession of the equinox is sort of like something that happens in astronomy and astrology, where the Earth's axis undergoes a slow circular motion over 26,000 years, and basically this means that this motion causes a shift in the position of the equinoxes, and also the calculation Vedic and Western astrologies use. So around 2,000 years ago, the tropical and sidereal Vedic astrology signs of astrology were aligned in the same position. So if the sun was in Scorpio in Vedic astrology, it was also in the constellation of Scorpio in Western astrology. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, this has caused a gradual westward sort of like drift of the tropical Western signs. So basically these signs and the Western signs shift 1 degree with every 72 years. So as a result of this ongoing shift, when Western astrology says the sun is in the constellation of Pisces, it's typically in the constellation of Aquarius. Still, this is because the degree, orb and the date for Western and Vedic astrology are 24 degrees, 24 days apart. So in Western astrology, the sun enters the constellation of Pisces around the 19th of February each year, but actually the sun doesn't arrive into the constellation of Pisces until the 13th to the 15th of March each year, and Vedic astrology takes this into account because it's based on the fixed star positions, and Vedic astrologers use sidereal calculations. So as a result, Vedic astrology takes into account the actual positions of the constellations in the sky at any given time, and also considers the precession of the equinox, adjusting for the shift in the position of the equinoxes over time. But in terms of Western astrology follows the tropical zodiac, which is based on the seasons rather than fixed star positions. Western astrologers also do not directly account for the precession of the equinox in their calculations as well, so this results in slightly different calculations and interpretations that are given whether we're using Western astrology or Vedic astrology. So yeah, as I said, Western astrology uses specific dates, so every year, regardless of where the sun actually is at the sky, the sun moves into Pisces around the 19th of February. So yeah, this discrepancy, this misalignment between the tropical zodiac and the actual positions of the constellations has led to a discrepancy between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. So I consider the actual where the sun and the moon are and where Mars and Venus are at any given time, and this is how I formulate these sort of like weekly scopes. So yeah, thanks for listening to this, and let's dive into this week's weekly scope. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain what parallels and contra parallels are in astrology, because I use them in my chart interpretation. So declination in astrology is the measure of how far a celestial body is, such as the sun, whether it's either north or south of the celestial equator. And the celestial equator is an imaginary line in the sky above the Earth's equator, which us astrologers use in our interpretation. So parallels happen when two planets are on the same declination, either both planets are on the north side side, or either both planets are on the south side, and this alignment increases the influence of the involved planets. So it's similar to a conjunction aspect, as it amplifies their energy, making the effects of the planets more pronounced. Contraparallels, on the other hand, happen when two planets are on the same declination, but one is in the north and one is in the south. So this alignment creates tension, which is similar to an opposition aspect, and it can lead to conflict, challenges and inner struggles between the energies of the planets involved. So contraparallels highlight areas of friction or contrast in our lives, urging us to find balance between the opposing forces at play. When transiting parallels and contraparallels happen, they can sort of like trigger significant events, shifting consciousness and periods of intense growth and transformation. So I look at these aspects closely during chart analysis to understand how planetary energies interact and influence each other during a specific time frame, to pinpoint key periods for personal development, relationship dynamics or career shifts, and other shifts like karmic shifts and stuff like that. Because I just find using contraparallels and parallels gives me more depth in interpretation, so I use them. So contraparallels and parallels in astrology serve as markers for potential challenges or breakthroughs, guiding us towards more self-awareness, love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness for ourselves and others, and shifts in consciousness and growth. So overall, just a shift in our mindset if we allow for it. So parallels and contraparallels just kind of like provide valuable insights into the complexities and nuances of the astrological interactions between planetary movements. So yeah, that's the end of what contraparallels and parallels are. So this week, the first aspect that is influencing us is the Sun making a contraparallel to Chiron, and this enters on the 14th of October, is exact at 1:02 p.m. on the 19th of October, and leaves us on the 24th of October. Mercury makes a contraparallel to Uranus, and this is exact at 5:40 on the 25th of October, enters on the 17th and leaves on the 26th. Jupiter square to Chiron is exact on the 23rd of October at 11:19 p.m. and this enters on the 15th of October and leaves on the 4th of November. Jupiter's in Cancer and Chiron's in Aries. Mercury makes a contraparallel to Jupiter on the 24th at 4:48 a.m. and it leaves on the 30th of October, and Venus makes a parallel to Saturn on the 24th at 12:51 p.m. and this enters on the 20th of October and leaves on the 28th. So a lot going on this week compared to last week where we just had two, right? So this week is a week of deep healing, unexpected insights and structured growth, right? So the Sun's contraparallel to Chiron, the Sun, our core identity, and contraparallel with Chiron, wounded healer, gives us a chance to deal with the tension between our conscious self-expression and our deepest wounds, putting a spotlight on where we feel most vulnerable, creating opportunities for healing through awareness and the integration of our shadows. Mercury's contraparallel to Uranus. Mercury, our thinking and communication. Uranus, breakthrough in innovation and unexpected changes. This is a dynamic tension this week between structured thought and revolutionary ideas. So we can expect unexpected insight, surprising conversation and mental breakthroughs. Jupiter square to Chiron. Jupiter, the planet of growth and higher learning, forming a square with Chiron, and we can face tension between optimism and woundedness, highlighting how our belief systems either support or get in the way of our healing process, challenging us to increase our understanding of pain and its purpose. Mercury's contraparallel to Jupiter creates tension between detailed thinking and big picture perspective, and it supports balancing analytical care with bigger philosophical understanding. Venus makes a parallel to Saturn, brings alignment between our values and our sense of duty, as it brings a grounded, mature approach to relationships and finances, supporting commitments that stand the test of time. So ultimately, this collection of weekly transits create a rhythm of growth and contraction, wounding and healing, inspiration and structure. So ultimately, we've been called to grow through our wounds rather than despite them, integrating our pain into a larger, more meaningful narrative of personal development. So in terms of the Sabian symbols that are ruling us this week, first we've got Jupiter at the first degree of Cancer, and the Sabian symbology is on a ship, the sailors lower an old flag and raise a new one. So this symbol represents transition, the changing of alliances and the acceptance of new principles. Jupiter's square invites us to change the flags we sail under, particularly regarding how we understand our wounds and growth. Chiron at the first degree of Aries, which has the Sabian symbology, a woman just risen from the sea. A seal is being opened to her, and this represents what comes from the unconscious, the integration of instinctive wisdom and the birth of new consciousness. And with Chiron receiving aspects from both the Sun and Jupiter this week supports, merging, coming out the other side of emotional, unconscious pain into awareness. So in terms of this week's timing, so the Sun's contra-parallel becoming exact on, the 19th. It starts the week off with focus healing. Sunday carries a deeply sensitive, emotionally open quality that supports both spiritual connection and vulnerability. This is a day for gentle activities, heart-opening conversations and compassionate self-reflection rather than demanding tasks or analytical thinking. Sunday evening through Monday, we can use these energies to begin to sift as we feel the approaching Mercury Uranus contra-parallel building in intensity. We might notice increasing mental restlessness, unexpected insights, or a desire to break free from conventional thinking patterns. And on Tuesday morning, as the Mercury Uranus contra-parallel becomes exact, this creates a day of potential breakthroughs and surprising communications. So Tuesday carries, electric, unpredictable quality that supports newness, fresh perspectives, beliefs, but also creates mental restlessness and scatteredness, and we can have a difficulty focusing on our routine tasks, our work, our day-to-day life, Wednesday brings a transition as Jupiter's Chiron square builds towards being exact right, and we can notice an increase in awareness of how belief systems affect our healing processes and where growth feels threatening because it triggers old wounds. On Thursday, the Jupiter Chiron square becomes exact, creating a powerful day for increasing your understanding of personal wounds and their meaning in your larger life journey. Thursday carries a quality of growing beyond limitations created by past pain. Through this growth might feel uncomfortable as it stretches beyond the familiar territory, We should be open to it still. On Friday, we've got Mercury's contra-parallel to Jupiter and Venus's parallel to Saturn becoming exact, creating a day that begins with big picture thinking and gradually grounds us into practical commitment. Friday morning supports connecting details to larger patterns, while the afternoon helps translate insights into concrete action and commitment. So ultimately, this week's peak times are Sunday. It's a peak day for sensitivity and healing awareness. Tuesday, it's a good day for mental breakthrough because of Mercury Uranus right, and Thursday and Friday, Jupiter Chiron and Mercury Jupiter can bring understanding to this week's events or other events we've been trying to understand. And Friday, Saturday, Sunday, going into next week is the peak commitment energy. So as the week begins, it begins with sensitive awareness, moves through to breakthrough and growth, and concludes with grounded commitment and a beautiful sequence for transformative healing. So yeah, as always, that's the summary of this week. The summary tea, if you want the in-depth tea and where I look at it from every angle possible, then keep on listening. So yeah, as I said, the sun's contra-parallel to Chiron brings dynamic tension between our core identity and our deepest wounds, forcing healing through conscious self-expression and authentic vulnerability. It can bring breakthrough healing of our core identity wounds, increased wisdom through processing pain, the ability to help others through shared experiences, greater self-acceptance and authenticity, recognition of your unique healing gifts, transformation of wounds into sources of strength, and leadership through vulnerable examples, right? But negatively, we can have painful confrontation with ego wounds, feeling exposed or vulnerable in public, identity crisis or questioning life direction, and we can have a fear of being seen as flawed or inadequate, a tendency to hide pain behind false confidence, difficulty accepting help or supporting others or accepting support from others. There can be a risk of spiritual bypassing, and we can just deny our pain and denial of what's going on, right? So ultimately, it's best used for proper deep healing. Don't try to put on a brave face if you're struggling. Authentic vulnerability is your superpower right now. Consider therapy, coaching, or spiritual counselling to work through what's surfacing. Your healing journey can become a gift to others, so don't hide your struggles. See it as your strength. Use this time to redefine what strength means to you, Mercury's contra-parallel to Uranus creates electric tension between conventional thinking and revolutionary insights, triggering breakthrough ideas and unexpected communication revelations. It can bring innovative thinking, breakthrough solutions to old problems, higher technological or scientific understanding, ability to communicate revolutionary ideas clearly, freedom from limiting thought patterns, exciting new perspectives and viewpoints, higher intuitive and psychic communication. But negatively, it can add to the mental restlessness and scattered thinking, a tendency towards rebellious or sucking communication, difficulty focus on routine mental tasks, risks of saying inappropriate or disruptive things, impatience with traditional learning methods. It can lead to technological glitches or communication breakdowns. It can lead to nervous tension and mental overstimulation. The best use of this energy is that it's brilliant for brainstorming, innovation and thinking outside the box. Don't try to force your mind into conventional patterns. Let it wander and explore unusual connections. Write down your insights as they come, even if they seem mad at first. This is excellent energy for learning new technologies or communicating about progressive ideas. Just be mindful not to shock people unnecessarily with radical viewpoints. Jupiter makes a square to Chiron, and this is exact on the 23rd at 11:19. And this creates expansive tension between growth opportunities and core wounds, challenging you to heal through wisdom, teaching and broadening your perspective beyond personal pain. Positively, it can lead to expansion of consciousness through healing work, opportunities to teach or mentor others. It can lead to a greater understanding of life's meaning and purpose. It can bring healing through travelling, education or philosophy. We can gain recognition or recognise ourselves as wisdom keepers or healers, We can have breakthrough insights about our spiritual growth and the ability to find meaning in past suffering. And negatively, it can add to us feeling overwhelmed, especially feeling overwhelmed as we can increase our awareness of personal or collective pain. We can have the tendency to preach or become self-righteous about healing, difficulty, accepting that some wounds take time to heal, risks of spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. We can feel burdened by others' pain and problems. We can have impatience with the slow pace of healing. We can have inflation of ego around healing abilities. The best way to use this energy is to teach or mentor or be open to listening, and healing work. Your wounds can become wisdom that genuinely helps yourself and others, but don't force advice on people who aren't ready. Consider furthering your education in healing arts or spiritual practices. Travel or explore different cultures, as this can provide healing perspectives, and remember that being a wounded healer means staying humble about your ongoing journey. Mercury makes a contraparallel to Jupiter, and this aspect creates dynamic tension between detailed thinking and big picture vision, challenging you to communicate wisdom while staying grounded in practical reality. So it allows us to communicate complex ideas simply. It gives us a bigger perspective on detailed problems. We can be optimistic and have more of an inspiring communication style. Adds to our ability to communicate complex ideas simply. We can have success in broadcasting, public speaking, publishing. We can have philosophical insights that solve practical problems. Higher learning and educational opportunities can happen, but it can add to us oversimplifying complex issues, risk of over-promising, impatience with detailed work or research, tendency towards know-it-all attitudes, difficulty focusing on small but important details. We can be over optimistic in our communication, and this can mislead others, and our mental restlessness and scattered interest can happen, right? So ultimately this is excellent for teaching, writing, or any communication that requires both wisdom and clarity. We can use this ability to see the bigger picture to help others understand complex issues. Just make sure you're not gushing over important details or making promises you can't keep. This is brilliant energy for educational plans or philosophical discussions that have practical, applications. Venus's parallel to Saturn creates a perfect alignment between love and commitment, right? Offering opportunities for serious long-term relationship decisions and mature expressions of affection. Positively can give us opportunities for lasting, committed relationships, as I said, a mature approach to love and financial matters, recognition for loyalty and dedication, the ability to build stable foundations with loved ones, practical expressions of love that create security, long-term planning for shared goals and values, respect and appreciation from authority figures. Or it can add to us feeling restricted or limited in our love choices. We can have a fear of commitment or long-term responsibility. We can have pessimistic attitudes about relationships. Financial limitations can affect lifestyle choices. We can be overly serious or formal in our approach to romance. We can have difficulty expressing warmth or spontaneous affection. We can feel unworthy of love or appreciation. So the best way to use this energy is to make serious commitments or have those important conversations about future, because as I said, this is proper grown-up relationship energy. Don't let the fear of responsibility prevent you from embracing deeper intimacy. Use this time to build solid foundations, routines into your relationship through practical actions rather than just words. If you're single, focus on becoming the kind of person worthy of lasting love by first giving it to yourself, right? So in terms of the overall weekly energy pattern of this week, it increases our sensitivity and compassion in relationships, opportunities for deep healing through awareness of old wounds, surprising insights and mental breakthroughs, growth of our belief systems, especially around how we view our personal challenges. It gives us the ability to commit to relationships that align with our core values, creative inspiration that combines practical skill with spiritual insight. It can give us the capacity to structure healing processes in sustainable long-term ways, recognition of how our past wounds have shaped current strengths and times of transcendental connection in otherwise ordinary relationships can happen, and it can give us the courage to face brutal truths with compassion rather than judgment, as we structure our healing processes and building long-term healing strategies into our life, right? But negatively, it can add to confusion between genuine intuition and wishful thinking. We can reopen old wounds without adequate support, so make sure you do it in a way that's healthy to you. When you're reopening your psychological, emotional, spiritual wounds, reach out for help and be gentle with yourself, nurture yourself in right ways. In terms of mental restlessness or difficulty concentrating can happen as well, tendency to magnify problems beyond what they actually are, blowing things out of proportion. We can feel restricted or limited by our relationship responsibilities. We can have a tension between idealistic visions and practical realities, and we may have to deal with resistance to new ideas or beliefs. We can confront belief systems that have limited our healing. We can be sensitive to criticism or perceived rejection, and we can struggle to balance structure with being spontaneous in relationships. So ultimately, to deal with this week's energy, find the balance between compassion and routine and structure. Be open to dealing with the painful aspects of your identity rather than avoiding the discomfort this brings. See it as an opportunity for integration. Ask yourself, what parts of yourself have you been rejecting or hiding, and how might acknowledging these aspects lead to greater wholeness. Expect the unexpected in communication and thought patterns this week, especially on Tuesday, because the Mercury-Uranus contra-parallel supports breaking free from mental ruts and seeing situations from completely new angles. Stay flexible and open to insights that might initially seem disruptive but ultimately lead to breakthrough. As Chiron squares Jupiter, our understanding of our personal wounds can increase, and this can kind of make us feel overwhelmed. But if we see these challenges as opening our eyes to our limiting beliefs and how we sort of use toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing to avoid healing, and it allows us to find meaning in our struggles and allowing our pain to be a teacher rather than just a burden and a drain on our time and other resources, right? And just be open to balance big picture thinking and connect with ourselves and the universal patterns and see how our individual stories fit into the larger human themes, allowing yourself to really connect with your story, making commitments based on authentic values rather than fleeting emotions or social expectations, is the key to dealing with this week's energy. Finding the balance between compassionate awareness of our wounds and structured action towards healing them, allowing yourself to feel deeply while also creating sustainable long-term practices that support long-term growth, So in terms of career and business, it's beneficial for creative professions, healthcare, education, and any work involving empathy and imagination. But the Sun's contra-parallel to Chiron, workplace vulnerabilities may also come up. This week there can be cases of imposter syndrome, old professional wounds can get triggered, and this can create an opportunity to confront these insecurities rather than allowing them to operate unconsciously and ignoring them. Mercury's contra-parallel to Uranus allows us to have brilliant insights and unexpected communications in our work-related projects. It's a great time for brainstorming, innovative problem solving, and pitching unconventional ideas. Just be mindful that others might need time to catch up with your mental leaps. And as Jupiter's Chiron square happens on Thursday, there can be tension between our growth opportunities and professional insecurities. New responsibilities can trigger old doubts about what you're capable of, and remember that growing into new roles often involves some discomfort. This doesn't mean that you're not ready for the growth. And as we go into Mercury's contra-parallel on Friday, it's great for balanced, detailed work with strategic vision. This aspect supports connecting daily tasks to larger professional goals and understanding of how specific projects contribute to bigger organisation objectives. And Venus, Saturn parallel on Friday brings focus to workplace values and commitments. This is an excellent time for formalising agreements, establishing clearer role responsibilities and making decisions about long-term professional investments. In our friendships, ultimately this week is great for creating space for deep empathetic conversations. Notice when current friendship dynamics trigger old wounds, remain open to unexpected perspectives or sudden changes in social friendships, Examine how beliefs about friendship might be limiting authentic connection and commit to friendships that align with your core values. In terms of self-partnership, practice gentle self-acceptance, particularly regarding aspects you typically judge. Approach wounds with compassion rather than resistance. Remain open to unexpected insights about yourself. Challenge limiting beliefs about what you're capable of healing or becoming, and create structured self-care practices that align with your authentic values. So with our hookups, it's important to practice discernment between genuine connection and romantic projection. Notice when casual relationships trigger old wounds. Communicate more directly about desires and boundaries. Examine how beliefs about casual intimacy may be limiting authentic experience. Approach hookups with integrity and respect, even when relationships are temporary. In our committed relationships this week, create space for spiritual connection and romantic renewal. Approach relationship and wounds with compassion rather than blame. Remain open to unexpected perspectives or new ways of relating. Examine how beliefs about relationships might be limiting authentic connection and make commitments based on authentic shared values rather than external expectations. So in terms of the best actions to take this week, create healing rituals, design personal practices that acknowledge wounds while supporting integration and wholeness. Practice compassionate listening, both with yourself and others. Create space for vulnerabilities to be expressed without judgment. Remain flexible to unexpected insights. Examine limiting beliefs. Identify beliefs about yourself, relationships, or life that have restricted your healing and growth. Make value-aligned commitments. Use Friday's Venus-Saturn energy to establish routines that support what truly matters to you. Balance detail with the bigger picture. Practice zooming in on specifics and out to bigger patterns throughout the week. Create boundaries around healing. Structure transformative processes so they're sustainable long-term rather than overwhelming. Express creativity that combines structure with flow. Find artistic outlets that allow both organisation and inspiration. Spend time in honest self-reflection. Journal about how past wounds have shaped current patterns and possibilities for transformation. Connect with spiritual support, whether through community, nature or personal practice. Strengthen relationships to sources of wisdom beyond logical understanding. And ultimately this week means taking actions that increase your understanding of wounding and healing, challenging limited narratives about pain and finding meaning in struggle rather than just trying to eliminate it. So in terms of the combined weekly meanings, the Sun's contra parallel to Saturn psychologically brings core identity wounds into conscious awareness, creating both healing processes and breakthrough potential. We may feel simultaneously more vulnerable and more authentic with increased awareness of how past wounds shape our self-expression. In terms of the karmic significant, this is a major healing initiation where soul wounds from multiple lifetimes come together, unite, converge for healing. The lesson involves transforming victim consciousness into wounded healer wisdom, learning to lead through vulnerability. Spiritually, the wounded healer archetype is fully activated, teaching us that our greatest wounds become our greatest gifts when consciously transformed. This represents spiritual rotation through integrated shadow work. Esoterically, the contra-parallel creates necessary tension between solar consciousness, which is our ego and identity, and Charonic wisdom. Healing through wounding, forcing evolution from unconscious wounding to conscious healing. Mercury's contra-parallel to Uranus, psychologically, makes our mental processes more rapid fire and electric this week, and we can have, revolutionary thoughts and insights. We may feel mentally restless and impatient with unconventional approaches, and we can have sudden downloads of innovative ideas, just those aha moments, like I get this now, Karmically, past life patterns of our mental rebellion and innovative thinking can surface for integration. The soul lesson involves learning to communicate revolutionary ideas constructively rather than destructively. Spiritually, the divine rebel archetype is activated, teaching us to challenge limited beliefs and outdated systems through conscious communication. This represents mental liberation from consensus reality, and from conforming. Esoterically, the contra-parallel creates electric tension between our mercurial consciousness, thought and communication, and the Uranian frequency, innovation, rebellion, allowing breakthrough insights that serve collective evolution. Jupiter square to Chiron expands the awareness of both our personal and collective wounding, creating opportunities for philosophical understanding of suffering whilst potentially overwhelming us with the magnitude of healing needed. Karmically, it represents a major initiation into wisdom keeper consciousness, where personal healing experiences become tools for collective healing. The lesson involves balancing personal healing with service to others. Spiritually, the wounded teacher archetype is activated, showing you how to transform suffering into wisdom and share healing insights with others. This represents graduation into elder mental consciousness. Esoterically, the square creates dynamic tension between Jupiterian expansion, growth and wisdom, and Charonic healing, wounding, and the wounding healing cycle, and the integration of our shadow material into our expanded consciousness. It kind of pushes it out this week into our conscious awareness, right? Mercury's contra-parallel to Jupiter, creates and adds to the status, focus and over optimistic communication psychologically, and we can just, feel inspired to share wisdom with this influence, but struggle with practical details. Karmically, past life teaching and mentoring abilities surface for integration. The soul lesson involves learning to communicate wisdom humbly and practically rather than dogmatically. Spiritually, the teacher archetype is activated, encouraging you to share knowledge and inspiration whilst remaining grounded in practical reality. This represents integration of higher wisdom into daily communication. Esoterically, the contra-parallel creates tension between mercurial detail, facts and analysis, and Jupiterian expansion, meaning and wisdom, forcing development of multi-dimensional thinking. And Venus's parallel to Saturn psychologically, as I said, matures our approach to love and relationships, creating a more realistic sort of mindset. It kind of can, dampen, get in the way of spontaneous romantic expression. We can feel more serious about commitment and long-term planning. Karmically, it represents the completion of relationship karma through mature commitment and responsible love. The lesson involves learning to express love through consistent action rather than emotional highs. Spiritually, the divine father principle works through love, teaching you about sacred commitment, loyalty, and the spiritual significance of material world relationships. Esoterically, the parallel creates beautiful and perfect alignment between reason, love, harmony and beauty, and Sagittarian structure, commitment, responsibility, allowing love to manifest through disciplined action. So ultimately, this week represents one of the most deep healing and transformative periods of the year, where multiple dimensions of consciousness come together to create breakthrough potential potential were basically being initiated into wounded healer consciousness, the ability to transform personal pain into collective wisdom. The pattern begins with divine love activation, with the Sun Tyrant aspect creating the perfect conditions for spiritual healing. This sets up a powerful foundation where love and healing work together rather than in opposition. And it's, a week where personal healing becomes a source of wisdom for others if we want to allow it to do so. And the Venus-Saturn energy helps us ground all this energy this week into practical commitment in our relationships, in our career goals, and into whatever. This isn't just about personal healing, also it's asking you if you're prepared to serve as a bridge between wounded and whole, between suffering and wisdom. And between the 19th and 23rd, we're sort of like having our heart healing connection activated into collective service. And by the end of the week, we can understand the difference between being wounded and being a wounded healer. Trust the process, even when it feels overwhelming. The universe is upgrading your capacity to hold both pain and love, both wisdom and vulnerability. You're becoming someone who can guide others through the darkness because you've learned to find light within your own shadow and darkness, And remember, it isn't about eliminating wounds, but integrating them into a larger, more complex understanding of ourselves and our journeys. And our flaws are not to be fixed, but doorways to deeper wisdom. Because often our culture triggers a narrative of healing as returning to some imagined state of wholeness before wounding. Before wounded happen, right? But that's not it. It's about accepting our wounds and becoming whole and integrating in wounds because they are now part of us, right? So this week transits invite a more mature understanding that integration of our wounds creates a different kind of wholeness, one that indicates rather than erases our painful experiences, finding meaning and even beauty in the broken places. The Japanese art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold highlighting rather than hiding the cracks, Similarly, this week invites us to repair our broken places with the gold of consciousness, creating a self that is more beautiful for having been broken and mindfully mended. This isn't spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. It's the deep work of finding meaning in struggle without denying its reality. Trust that this week's movement from sensitivity through breakthrough to commitment offers a natural rhythm that supports our growth. The vulnerabilities you acknowledge early in the week create openings for the insights that arrive midweek, which in turn provide the understanding needed for meaningful commitments that we need to make by the end of the week. So in terms of soul searching, questions to reflect on, we can ask, how have your wounds shaped your strengths and what wisdom have you gained through your most painful experiences? Where might you be limiting your growth through beliefs about what your wounds mean about you or what you're capable of becoming? And what structures, routines, relationships or practices will support your healing journey in a long-term way, honouring both your need for transformation and your need for stability. So in terms of the weekly Zodiac guidance, Aries, with Chiron in your sign receiving aspects from both the Sun and Jupiter, it's all about healing any wounds around your self-expression and identity. The Jupiter square from Cancer activates tensions between family matters and personal growth. Use Tuesday's Mercury Uranus energy to break free from limiting self-concepts, and Friday Venus Saturn parallel to create structures that support your authentic expression without aggression or impulsivity. Taurus with Uranus in your sign making a contra parallel to Mercury. This week brings unexpected insights about security and values. And as Venus moves to parallel Saturn later in the week, you're supported in making commitment based on authentic values rather than habitual patterns. And the Jupiter Chiron square helps you recognize how unconscious beliefs might be limiting elevating your sense of worth, And Gemini, your ruling planet Mercury forms two significant contra parallels this week, creating a dynamic mental world for you. Tuesday's connection with Uranus brings breakthrough in your thinking that helps you see group dynamics from fresh perspectives. Friday's contra parallel with Jupiter helps you balance detailed communication with a bigger sort of mindset. The Sun Chiron aspect puts a spotlight on old wounds related to belonging that are ready for healing. And Cancer, with Jupiter in your sign squaring Chiron, it can bring significant growth through healing family patterns. The Sun Chiron contra parallel puts a spotlight on tensions between public image and private vulnerabilities. Use Mercury's aspects midweek to gain fresh insights about professional direction, and use Venus, Saturn and Friday to make commitments aligned with your authentic values. Leo, with your ruling planet the Sun forming a contra parallel with Chiron, highlight tensions between your worldview and personal insecurities. It supports increasing your perspective through acknowledging rather than avoiding vulnerable areas. The Mercury-Uranus aspect midweek brings unexpected communications and travel opportunities that challenge comfortable routines. And Venus's Saturn parallel helps you create routines that support both adventure and security in balanced measure. Virgo, with Venus in your sign parallel to Saturn this week, you're dealing with a fascinating balance between dreamy sensitivity and practical commitment in relationships. Your ruling planet, Mercury, forming a contra parallel with both Uranus and Jupiter, supports breakthrough insights about shared resources and intimacy patterns. The Jupiter-Chiron square activates healing related to trust and vulnerability. Use this weekly energy to create both spiritual connection and practical structures in close relationships. Libra, this week brings healing opportunities related to relationship patterns and self-worth. Mercury, moving from your sign to Scorpio while forming aspects with Uranus and Jupiter, supports breakthrough insights about partnership dynamics. Venus, Saturn and Friday helps you create healthier routines that support both productivity and well-being. Scorpio, with Mercury entering your sign while forming contra parallels to both Uranus and Jupiter, this week can bring powerful insights about your own psychological patterns. The Sun Chiron energy puts a spotlight on where work-life balance needs to change, and the Jupiter Chiron square activates healing related to service versus self-care. Venus in parallel with Saturn helps you establish long-term creative practices and recreational activities. Sagittarius, your ruling planet, Jupiter squares Chiron this week, bringing significant growth through healing wounds related to self-expression and group belonging. The Sun Chiron aspect puts a spotlight on tensions between personal pleasure and social responsibilities. Mercury's aspects support breakthrough insights about friendship dynamics and long-term goals. Use Venus, Saturn energy and Friday to create meaningful home routine. Capricorn, with your ruling planet Saturn receiving a parallel from Venus, it brings a spotlight to your relationship and values this week, and the Jupiter square activates healing related to family patterns and career pressures. The Mercury aspects bring unexpected insights about professional direction. Use this week's energy to balance ambition, reaching your goals with emotional well-being, and create routines that support both. Aquarius, with your modern ruler Uranus receiving a contra parallel from Mercury, it can bring breakthrough in your thought and communication patterns and learning processes. The Sun Chiron energy puts a spotlight on tensions between your intellectual understanding and emotional wisdom. The Jupiter Chiron square activates healing related to belief systems. The Venus Saturn energy on Friday creates meaningful practices that mix innovation with tradition. Pisces, with your traditional ruler Jupiter square and Chiron, it brings spiritual healing related to self-worth and self-resources. The Sun Chiron aspect puts a spotlight on tensions between material and spiritual values, and Mercury's aspects this week bring unexpected insights about financial patterns and intimate relationships. By the end of the week, Venus's parallel to your sign helps you create meaningful boundaries that protect your sensitivity while allowing authentic connection. So in terms of, mantras for this week, Aries, I am open to my wounds as sources of wisdom, allowing vulnerability to strengthen rather than diminish my pioneering spirit. My identity expands to encompass both my strengths and sensitivities, developing wholeness through integration rather than striving for perfection. Taurus, I'm open to unexpected insights that challenge my need for certainty, finding security in flexibility rather than inflexibility. My values deepen when I balance material comfort with spiritual meaning, creating stability that supports growth rather than limits it. Gemini, I balance analytical thinking with intuitive breakthroughs, allowing both detailed understanding and bigger picture vision to inform my perspective. My communication heals when I speak from both mind and heart, bridging rather than separating these aspects of wisdom. Cancer, I grow through healing family patterns, recognizing how past wounds have shaped my emotional world without letting them determine my future. My nurturing nature deepens when I care for my own vulnerabilities with the same compassion I offer others. Leo, I shine most authentically when I integrate rather than hide the vulnerable aspects of myself. My creative power strengthens when I transform painful experiences into wisdom that serves others, turning wounds into gifts through conscious awareness. Virgo, I balance analytical precision, focus with spiritual surrender, finding healing in both structured practice and compassionate acceptance. My natural discernment becomes wisdom when I apply it with love rather than judgment, seeing clearly without rejecting what I see. Libra, I create balance that includes rather than avoids the messiness of authentic emotion, finding harmony through integration of all aspects of my experience. My relationships deepen when I bring both vulnerability and boundaries, both heart and structure, to my relationships. Scorpio, I transform through bringing light to sadder aspects, neither denying darkness nor becoming identified with it. My power deepens when I use intense awareness to heal rather than control, being open to the full spectrum of human experience with courage and compassion. Sagittarius, I increase through healing rather than avoiding wounds, finding wisdom in experiences that challenge my optimism. My faith becomes more authentic when it is open to suffering rather than bypassing it, creating meaning that acknowledges the full complexity of human experience. Capricorn, I achieve through balanced ambition that honours both external goals and internal well-being. My authority strengthens when I integrate rather than reject vulnerable aspects of myself, leading from wholeness rather than harm. Aquarius, I innovate most effectively when I balance revolutionary thinking with practical application, bridging visionary ideas and grounded action. My humanitarian nature deepens when I connect universal principles with personal experience, seeing how individual healing contributes to collective evolution. I deal with the balance between spiritual surrender and practical boundaries, finding the sacred middle path where both can coexist. My compassion becomes more effective when tempered with discernment, creating a connection that respects rather than dissolves healthy separation. So in terms of content to create, because this week bridges healing, vulnerability with practical structure, content that focuses on and nurtures emotional sensitivity and spiritual connection, and that allows our unconscious to be brought into our conscious awareness. So guided meditations for healing specific wounds, personal stories about transforming personal experiences into growth, visual content that brings emotional depth and spiritual beauty, explorations of how practices can have spiritual significance, content that helps people connect with their intuition and inner wisdom, breakthrough content that challenges limiting beliefs about healing and growth, that can bring innovative perspectives on common challenges or wounds, content that reframes struggles as opportunities for growth, surprising relationships between seemingly unrelated concepts, interviews with people who have transformed difficult experiences into wisdom, tools for identifying and challenging limiting beliefs about what's possible. And by the end of the week, as we use Mercury, Jupiter and Venus, Saturn energies to create content that helps people translate insights into long-term practices. So we can structure healing rituals or routines, have frameworks for making meaningful commitments, systems for balancing vulnerability with boundaries, content that connects specific practices to larger growth journeys, templates for creating personalized healing routines and structures, So throughout the week, the most powerful content will integrate rather than separate emotional vulnerability and practical structure, spiritual wisdom and everyday application, personal healing and collective growth, content that helps your audience deal with healing journeys with both compassion and discipline, showing how structure and routine can actually support rather than restrict emotional processing, and how spiritual connection can increase rather than replace practical action. Remember that your most vulnerable contributor as a creator during this period may be demonstrating how apparent opposites, structure and flow, wounding and wisdom, earthly and divine love can work together to create wholeness rather than fragmentation, and your audience needs to see how integration rather than elimination of challenging aspects creates authentic healing and sustainable long-term growth. So now I'm just going to talk about the day-to-day aspects and how they influence this week's main aspects. So on the 19th of October, Venus's parallel to Neptune is exact at 6:38. Mercury's trine to the moon's north node is exact at 9:32. The sun's contra-parallel to Chiron is exact at 1:03 p.m. The sun's quincunx to Saturn is exact at 3:31, and the moon void of course starts at 7:26. So the moon void of course just helps us to, take a break, to relax. So it's good to just tie up loose ends. Mercury's trine to the moon's north node can bring fated conversations, clear insights and destiny-aligned decisions. It's an important energy that helps us speak our truth over the next few days and listen for guidance from unexpected sources, but we just need to watch out for being overloaded with information and the pressure to make choices quickly, right? And the sun's quincunx to Saturn helps practical changes, and it helps with the main theme of maturity this week, helping us to change our plans when needed, but it can add to the tension between our desires and responsibilities. So we can use this to balance ambition with patience and flexibility, right? And in terms of the question to ask, you can ask, where do you let old wounds or unrealistic ideas cloud your judgment, and how might honest self-reflection today help you gain clarity, right? So yeah, on the 19th, you can write or create something inspired by your dreams or intuition, have heartfelt conversations with someone you trust, make one small practical change to your daily routine. On the 20th of October, Mercury makes a conjunction to Mars at 7:52 a.m. Mercury makes a quintile to Pluto at 11:22 a.m. and Mars makes a quintile to Pluto at 2:21, and these aspects last for the next 2 days, right? And Mercury is in Libra, Mars is in Libra, Pluto's in Capricorn. So Mercury's conjunction to Mars adds to us being mentally focused and gives us courage and the motivation to speak up or take decisive action. It's perfect for tackling tough conversations or projects. Negatively, it can add to the arguments and impatience, impulsive words and sharp tongues and hasty decisions this week. Best use of this energy is to have honest conversations that respect yours and other people's boundaries. Also for assertive problem solving and brave new starts, right? Mercury's quintile to Pluto helps with deep insight, strategic thinking and the power to persuade. It's great energy for research, negotiation and uncovering hidden truths. Negatively, it can lead to obsessive thoughts or manipulative communication if we're not careful. We can use our words to empower and not control. Dig deep but stay ethical. Mars' quintile to Pluto adds to the motivation to change this week, builds our resilience and helps with our ability to overcome obstacles. Our willpower can be supercharged. but negatively it can add to power struggles, and it can lead to a tendency to bulldoze others, so we need to just try and stay calm and focus our motivation and meaningful goals and transform challenges into stepping stones, right? So in terms of question to ask yourself today, you can ask, where do you let anger or fear of confrontation silence your truth, and how might honest mindfulness expression today set you free? And to integrate today's energies, write down what you need to say, then speak it with courage and kindness. Channel excess energy into physical or creative projects. Reflect on a recent ending and what wisdom it's brought you, On the 21st of October, the moon enters Libra at 5:07 a.m. Mercury's contrapower to Uranus is exact at 5:41, and there's a new moon in Libra at 1:25, right? So the new moon in Libra brings balance and diplomacy and emotional energy. It can make us desire connection more, perfect for repairing arguments and setting personal intentions. Fresh energy for setting goals under this Libra new moon, especially with creative projects, right? But negatively it can add to indecisive or overly concerned with other people and pleasing them, and it can stir up relationship wounds and highlight where balance is lacking, right? So the best use of this energy is to focus on restoring balance in relationships and creating beauty in your surroundings. It can also be good to set intentions for harmony, fairness and new collaborations with others, right? So ultimately we're being invited to reset our intentions around relationships, beauty and balance, and break free from old patterns, expect the unexpected, be open to new ways of thinking and relating, let go of baggage and set new intentions, because it's a potent mix of renewal, balance and inventive thinking today. We can have new beginnings in relationships and creative projects, opportunities for repairing and making peace and harmony, and it can increase our intuition and social awareness, but negatively it can lead to indecision, or our people-pleasing tendencies can come up, and this can lead to nervous energy and scattered thoughts. There can be sudden disagreements and misunderstandings, and we can have difficulty letting go of things today, But the best use of today's energy is to brainstorm new solutions to old problems, set clear intentions for balance and beauty, practice active listening and open-mindedness, and just have honest conversations in our relationships, right? And don't be afraid to pitch something unconventional at work, or try something new. In terms of the question to ask, you can ask, where do you cling to old ways of thinking or relating, and how might being open to new perspectives and new ways of thinking and relating to yourself and others open the door for harmony? So to integrate today's energy, write down 3 intentions for harmony or renewal, keep them visible, try a new creative activity or approach to a problem from a different angle, practice a short meditation on balance, visualizing scales coming into balance, On the 22nd of October, the moon enters via combustion, so this motivates deep emotional cleansing, giving us the courage to face old wounds and drive to transform what's hidden, but negatively it can add to the mood swings of the week and the emotional volatility and the sense of being tested by fire. The best use of this energy is to use it for honest self-reflection, shadow work and letting go of emotional baggage. Emotions can run hot and old patterns can surface for release. It's a call to face your feelings head on and use the fire of transformation to purify your path. It's all about courageously unveiling what's hidden and allowing emotional fire to build new strength. It's a day of emotional reckoning and purification, and it points to a day when you can't avoid what's simmering beneath the surface. You can thrive by being honest with yourself, allowing old hurts to surface and trusting that this fiery passage can lead to renewal. The planetary aspects today supports deep healing and the courage to transform, right? So we can have emotional breakthroughs, and this can lead to like a cathartic release that can just feel cleansing and purifying. We can have an increase in our intuition and self-awareness and courage to confront difficult and challenging truths, and an opportunity for deep healing, which is the main theme of this week. But it can add to us having mood swings or emotional chaos. We can dwell too much, reflect too much and past wounds rather than moving forward. We can feel overwhelmed and on edge or easily triggered, and we can, have a difficulty letting go of controlling things. So the best use of this energy is to practice shadow work or journaling, allowing yourself to feel and process emotions fully, release grudges or old resentments, use creative outlets to channel these intense feelings, and at work it may feel intense today, power struggles may come up, but it's best to just try and, have honest communication, and rather than argue, create the space for active listening. Relationships today of all kinds can benefit from vulnerability and the willingness to clear the air. In terms of the question to ask yourself, you can ask, where do you resist facing your deepest emotions, and how might allowing yourself to feel the fire today lead to lasting transformation? Set aside time for honest journaling, write about what's beneath the surface, practice deep breathing or grounding exercises when emotions come up, and use creative expression, art, music, movement, dance, designing to process and release intense feelings. So on the 23rd of October, the Sun makes a quinquats to Neptune, the Moon enters void of course, the Moon enters Scorpio, the Sun makes a quinquats to Uranus, and Jupiter square to Chiron is exact at 11:20, right? So yeah, we've got a lot going on today. So the Moon void of course, as I said, is always good for reflecting and doing meditation and stuff like that. And when the Moon enters Scorpio, it gives us, or rather adds to the emotional courage of the week, and it's perfect for shadow work and honest conversations over the next few days. So this week is really a week of honesty, right? But it can add to the jealousy, secrecy and emotional instability and intensity. But it's great for healing and meaningful relationships. The Sun's quinquats to Neptune adds to the imagination, creativity and spiritual sensitivity of the week. It's great for mystical and creative plans, but our boundaries can be blurred, and it can cause confusion and make us susceptible to escapism, into intoxicating substances, too much binging on TV shows, or sex or alcohol and drugs, because Neptune energy can always make us escape into toxic things, right? So we just need to watch out for that. The best use of this energy is to trust your intuition, double check facts and avoid wishful thinking. Do not ignore red flags, because Neptune energy can make us want to be lied to and manipulated as well. There's, us feeling the need to manipulate others. The Sun's quinquats to Uranus brings flashes of insight and the desire to break free from stale routines. It can bring restlessness, unpredictability or sudden troubles to plans. The best use of this energy is to stay flexible, be open to change, but don't throw caution to the wind. So in terms of the question to ask yourself today, you can ask yourself, where do you avoid facing your deepest wounds, and how might you learn to lean into the discomfort today or any other day to, find true healing in what needs healing in your life, right? Ultimately, it's a day of breaking free from old traumas with courage and compassion, and a lot of energy is giving us compassion this week, trusting our intuition and being open to unexpected change, and just having that balance between using our intuition and judgment, our discernment, right? And, just being open to the mysteries beneath the surface of life. We can be really at a spiritual crossroads today with this energy, but it gives us the courage to face our trauma, and have spiritual and creative breakthroughs and have deep emotional insight. So it's another aspect that's really good for shadow work on honest self-reflection, self-forgiveness, self-love, acceptance, management. It gives us the ability to stay flexible and open to change, and to just deepen our connection with ourselves. So it's important today to integrate all this energy, to set some time aside for honest journaling or shadow work, practice a grounded meditation, to steady your emotions, reach out to someone you trust for heart to heart conversations, you know. So on the 24th of October, Mercury's contra parallel to Jupiter is exact at 4:49. Mercury enters Scorpio at 8:04. Venus's parallel to Saturn is exact at 12:52. The Sun makes a square to Pluto at 2:25. Mercury makes a quincunx to Chiron at 2:43. Mercury makes a trine to Jupiter at 4:08, and the Moon leaves Vedic at midnight. So again, a lot's going on, a lot is going on today. So ultimately, when the Moon leaves Vedic, emotional chaos can settle and more clarity can be found within ourselves. It can feel like a sense of release. We may feel a bit raw after intensity, but it can be like coming out of a hot bath into cool air. The best use of this energy is to take stock of what you've learned and let your feelings settle. Mercury in Scorpio improves our mind for deep research, honest conversations, and uncovering hidden truths, but it can stir up suspicion, excessive thinking, and the tendency to kind of brood, dwell too much on the past. The best use of this is to investigate, ask the hard questions, and speak with courage. The Sun square to Pluto allows us to transform and break free from our patterns and face our fears, but it can add to the power struggles of this week and control issues and add to the intense confrontations and arguments of this week. The best use of this energy is to channel the intensity into positive change and projects, right? Don't shy away from the truth. It can be hard to swallow and face, but don't shy away from it. Mercury's quincunx to Chiron helps us to heal, communication problems, but it can add miscommunication as well. It's best to practice compassionate communication and listen deeply today. Mercury's trine to Jupiter inspires big ideas, wise decisions, and a sense of hope for the future, but negatively it can make us miss the finer details. We can have overconfidence, we can overpromise. The best use of this energy is to share your vision, teach or learn something new. So best use of today's energy is to strengthen relationships through reliability and trust, channel intensity into creative work or healing, practice compassionate communication, watch out for power struggles and excessive thinking and suspicion and jealousy. Be mindful that miscommunication can trigger old wounds. You can feel kind of unsupported in relationships as well, so just be gentle with yourself and others, because really healing conversations can happen and this can strengthen relationships and we can recommit to them as well. It really gives us the power to renew things today and repair things in our relationship. So in terms of the questions to ask, you can ask, where do you avoid speaking your deepest truth, and how may honest communication today lead to real transformation? So on the 25th of October, the Sun makes a biquintal to Saturn at 8:12. The Moon void of course starts at 10:17 a.m. The Sun makes a sesquiquadrant to the Moon's north node at 11:59. The crescent moon phase starts at 4:43, and Mercury's trine to Saturn starts at 10:17. So again, a lot going on. So the crescent moon motivates hope, renewal and desire and gives us the need to move forward, but it can bring impatience and a sense of restlessness if the progress feels slow. It's best to set small achievable goals and trust the process, not only today but this week. The Sun's biquintal to Saturn allows us to carry on making creative solutions to our practical problems this week, mixing discipline with inspiration, but again we can feel blocked by rules and tradition this week. The best use of this energy is to be creative, and that's the theme of this week. If you're feeling pain, think of something that you can creatively do or make to understand it, right? So the Sun sesquiquadrant to the Moon's north node helps us realign with our true path, can stir up tension negatively between our desires and our destiny, making us question our direction. This is calling us, and it's best to reflect on where we're being called to grow, even if it feels uncomfortable, because a lot of this week's energy is really uncomfortable, and Mercury's trine to Saturn again helps with that mental clarity, focus and staying power and keep on going and doing that hard work, giving us the ability to communicate with authority and wisdom and take the lead in communication. But it can add to the heaviness or seriousness that can come up in our thinking. So it's best used to make important plans, have honest conversations and commit to our goals, turning inspiration into action. And it it can really highlight the value of discipline and honest communication. That's a lot of aspects this week is really like putting the spotlight on that, right? And helping us to find warmth and security in unexpected places, and reminding us that even though loss or vulnerability happens, this can lead to wisdom and resourcefulness, and it brings a karmic lesson about detachment and sharing hard-won knowledge with others. It's about mixing inspiration with discipline for real-world results, right? And just being open to emotional renewal, be able to turn inspiration into practical wisdom if we're willing to pause and reflect on how we can do this, right? And taking those small steps to the big changes, not sort of like undermining the importance of the small steps as we make those subtle but meaningful changes in direction, So this week is a week of creative breakthroughs that should be grounded in reality, honest, productive conversations, subtle but powerful karmic realignments, steady progress, making that to our long-term goals. But negatively this week, we can feel blocked by tradition, authority, or our own unwillingness to get outside of our comfort zone, right? This week, there can be a lot of restlessness and impatience because of slow progress. There can be a lot of emotional uncertainty because of the moon void of courses and the via combustor period, right? And there can be a tension between personal desires and destiny this week. But the best use of all of this week's energy is to make practical plans, especially for creative projects. Reflect on your life direction and change when need be. Commit to honest and open communication, and don't forget to take those small steady steps to your big goals. Sometimes we have to break down the big into the small to achieve it. So this week, our career and every aspect of our life benefits from strategic planning and clear communication. In terms of the question to ask yourself today, you can ask, where do you resist routine, structure or discipline, and how might being open to steady progress today and in your life help you build the life you truly want? In terms of integrating today's energies, write down one creative idea and map out a simple practical plan to bring it to life. Have an honest conversation with someone you trust about your long-term goals, and practice a grounded meditation to study your mind and your emotions. So yeah, that's the end of the weekly scopes from the 19th to the 25th of October. I'm Amani, your holistic astrological life coach. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care and see you next time.